Hello YouTube friends. Today we're going to talk about culturing live foods for seahorses to prepare for a vacation. Casey had reached out to me asking me if I ever thought about using Livebearers to produce live foods in the seahorse tank so that they could be available to seahorses while he was away and maybe reduce the number of times he would require someone to come over to the house and feed them their frozen mysis shrimp. Well, that led into a very interesting conversation. I have used Livebearers in the past. In fact, I use mollies because they do convert to salt water very well. But from my experience, even though the seahorses will eat the young initially, they seem to lose interest pretty fast. I'm not quite sure why that is. Perhaps the fish don't move in a way that's normal for how they capture their prey, because they do move up and down the vertical water column, which is very unlike their typical prey that usually remains close to the substrate and moves horizontally in the living area. So it's possible that the seahorses just tire of trying to chase the fish in an abnormal way. It's possible too that because the fish really don't represent a good nutritional profile that's appropriate for seahorses, they innately know that and just start losing interest because it's really not nourishing them in the way that they require. Now, another idea is to raise ghost shrimp. And even though ghost shrimp fit that profile of what seahorses would typically eat, and the same with mysis shrimp as well, there are difficulties with acquiring the right size or the right quantities for when you're going away. One option is to create a culture of them, but they do breed kind of slow. The ghost shrimp, for example, reproduce young maybe every 3 to 4 weeks, and they might produce a few hundred young when they do that. But to be successful with a culture in a separate aquarium or other vessel, you have to have it set up in a way or add the extra time to separate adults from babies, because ghost shrimp are cannibalistic and they will eat the babies. If you don't separate them, it doesn't matter if you have them in their own tank, likely you will not be able to raise any of those babies. And I'm not quite sure how long it takes to raise the babies large enough that they would be of interest to the seahorses, because they are pelagic at the very beginning of their life, and it isn't until much later when they're much older that they become more benthic. Even if you tried to raise ghost shrimp in the display tank with the seahorses, you would face other challenges. One, the seahorses would probably eat the majority of the adults, eliminating the potential for reproduction. Those adults that would be too big for them would produce, but once the babies are born, because they're pelagic, they would be swept away into the sump, and unlikely they would survive. And even if they did, it would be really tough to collect them from a sump in any quantity that would be useful. An option that I suggest is amphipods. Amphipods are a lot more prolific than ghost shrimp. They produce about every 2 to 3 weeks a few dozen. Most of the time they're benthic, so you could have them in an aquarium and they can find places to hide. You would need to have either substrate or some rock or coral skeletons or macroalgae so that they have a place to reside while the seahorses hunt them. But one problem with that is I'm finding that seahorses can find those adults pretty darn fast, and they deplete the adult population so fast that they don't get a chance to produce young. And once the adult's gone, the seahorses start feasting on the young. So it's really hard to keep a population going just in the tank. Now you can probably have some success culturing them, and I've been experimenting with that myself. But again, I'm really not sure if it's fast enough to produce in volumes to prepare for vacation. My best suggestion is, before leaving for vacation, have a delivery made the day or two before you leave. Make sure there are hiding places in the aquarium and just order a large volume of amphipods. You probably have to buy them online to get sufficient numbers. But doing this, you ensure that your seahorses have good, high nutrition food of the perfect profile of nutrients and enzymes and lipids and saltwater fatty acids. They support the predator response. Seahorses can graze on them at their leisure. You don't have to worry about them dying. And you could get away with having somebody come over just once in a while, maybe once a day, for providing frozen mysis shrimp supplemental feedings as well. So that's my suggestion. I think that's what works best. I think trying to raise other live bearers like enders, as Casey had suggested, I had never heard of them before and I had to look them up. It looks like they might be related to guppies, but even them, they only produce broods about once a month, and there are only a few dozen. There's no way, even if the seahorses did eat them and maintain interest, that those fish would be able to keep up enough reproduction to keep the seahorses well fed. So those are just my thoughts about keeping your seahorses well fed while you are away on vacation. I hope this was helpful to you. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.